I am Madhura Dasgupta Sinha, the founder and CEO of Aspire for Her. Very, very excited to welcome all of you to what is going to be our 15th community. Let me take a few steps back. Aspire for Her was started on Women's Day 2020. It's roughly about 2.5 years ago. And today we have about 200,000 members, mentors, and supporters across 60 different countries. We work with 50-odd corporates who seek our support in seeing more diversity in their own workforce. But while I said that this is the 15th community of Aspire for Her that we're launching today, yes, we have had communities of women in colleges, girls in school, a huge return to work communities which are focused on tech careers, communities which are focused on women who have lost their primary breadwinners to COVID, and so on and so forth. This community is actually not our 15th community, but it is an extension of the first community that we launched even before Aspire for Her was born. And that community is Trillion. Trillion stands for the $1 trillion opportunity that India has in front of it if there were more women who were getting to work. This is not our study. This is done by McKinsey Global Institute. And this is the core of the reason why Aspire for Her was formed and was born. So Trillion is that group that we formed with people who started off as my friends, and many others who later became my friends and became mentors at Aspire for Her. In Aspire for Her, we believe that changing the mindset is the most important step in a woman's professional journey. And that's why we have rather cheekily adopted a 5-point mindset change model called E cube is equal to MCQ. E cube stands for where we want every woman in India to be, either in employment, entrepreneurship, or education, which leads to one of these two. So in Trillion, there are a group of very passionate women leaders. And you can see some of them here. 2 of them are going to be speaking on the panel. 3 of them are going to be speaking on the panel here. And it's actually a wonderful, overwhelming moment for me to say that Trillion has been really what has defined Aspire for Her all this while. Because it is these women who have made the safe space for women leaders to just be themselves. They have ensured that the members get the right opportunities in life, whether it is getting educated or getting a job or getting prepared for something big. And many of them have even saved lives in what we called our Not Alone movement. So first of all, a warm vote of thanks to all the members of Trillion today. Today, we're just giving a name to Trillion. We're calling it the Women Leaders Community. And we are thrilled and beyond excited that the US Consulate, and that's represented today here by Rob Anderson and by Amrita Di Mello, is beside us on this journey. Had it not been for Amrita, we would probably not have taken this step at this point in time. So my heartfelt thanks to you, Amrita, for making this moment a reality for us. And of course, we're ably supported by the AWE Foundation. When you hear what AWE stands for, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. AWE stands for Achieving Women's Equity. And we also have Seema Chaturvedi among us here to talk to us a little bit about her take on what women leaders and most precisely women in boards really means for India. So this community is really going to be an extension of Trillion as I see it. And I'm going to get a lot more friends in Aspire for Her. But what is very beautiful about this movement is that the women here have all wanted to give back. They're not really talking about their careers. or about their aspirations. They've always wanted to help others make the way. But today, this community is about resources for women leaders. This community is about all of you finding friendships, a safe space where you can grow and you can aspire for positions of power. Sometimes power is not a great word and not associated with a lot of women, but without that, we cannot really change the labor force participation rate. Today, less than 20 women, the precise number is 19. 19 out of 100 working age women are in the workforce in India and adding to the economy. We are third from the bottom in a list of 146 countries in terms of economic participation of women as per the Global Gender Gap Index. Is that where we want to be? Is that where all of you want to be? Is that the legacy that you want to leave behind? This is your opportunity to leave behind that legacy. So let's make this community really powerful. Let's make this community worth something. And with the US Consulate and our foundation by our side, I'm sure Aspire for Her will also help realize many dreams. With that, I'd like to first introduce Seema Chaturvedi, who is the founder of AW Foundation and AW Funds. AW stands for Achieving Women's Equity. As I said, Seema has taken all the trouble to join us from the US. It's not a great time for her, or maybe you're just beginning your day, I think, Seema. And Seema has a fantastic career spanning more than 20 years in this space. And Seema is going to tell us a little bit about what this means to AW Foundation and what she thinks it means for India.
Well, thanks so much, Madhura. Ladies, and gentlemen, such a pleasure to be meeting with you. A minor correction, I'm actually sitting in Bangalore. so, so the time zone is not that unfavorable. But it is a lot of pleasure to meet amazing mission aligned people. And I recognize a lot of friends here. Manisha, nice to meet you again here, and glad that you're part of this community. So I want to say to the folks, look, I've done this, and Madhura referred to it, investing investment banking for, let's call it 30 years. I started calling it 25 plus years just to sound more cool, but worked in India and US both. The one thing that has struck me is the massive, which I was actually blind to till about 2016, was this whole notion about inequity in gender. And my blinders came off when and US State Department and US Mission in India have been very instrumental in our journey as well. When Rob, your colleagues helped us launch a program, which was a pan-India program to promote women entrepreneurs. The program was called the All India Roadshow for Women's Economic Empowerment through Entrepreneurship. What blew our mind was, and we helped 575 women participants, it really crystallized for me for the first time in my professional career, the massive gross inequity. When I looked at venture funding, and less than 2% of venture funding now, we sadly very well known, less than 2% venture funding going to women businesses. And, I have my colleague Divya Sampat's here, who's a sponsor of the fund. We went about launching AW funds to address that exact problem. Nobody can convince any one of us it's a deal pipeline issue, contrary to what I was told when I began the journey. Oh, you won't find enough company, et cetera, et cetera. Folks, let me break it for you. In this, if you call it the power game, the power unlock happens at capital allocation. And what Madhura is doing is phenomenal with AFH. But we, as the team of AW, see it at two levels. AW funds is unlocking capital allocation to invest in innovation to promote gender equity. And that to us has become the reason we kind of wake up in the morning and get to work. AW Foundation is Achieving Women Enterprise, which is addressing the other aspect of capacity building along four verticals. So clearly, We do, and we are a US foundation. Our funds is an India fund. Our foundation is a US fund with a global mandate. And we were delighted to partner with AFH because we've done that in the past. We've worked with FICCI Flow and other organizations around the country, in addition to TIE, etc. The mission of our foundation is to, as I said, achieve women enterprise to make them economically independent. And we think there are four very important aspects of that. Number one, we call it edification, but education and actionable intelligence. Number two, which is financial literacy, digital literacy, entrepreneurial skills, and men and well-being. Number two is market access. Number three is gender disaggregated data actually informing good policy. And number four is building communities, which is where the alignment came in with AFH, because what all of you are doing is phenomenal, and we want to be very supportive of that. So women leaders community is very close to our heart, and we were ecstatic to be having this program launched because, as Madhura rightly said, you cannot be it if you can't see it, or you can be it if you can see it, if that's the positive spin. So all of you are amazing role models, and anything that we can do to support this and grow this, we'd be delighted to. So Madhura, thanks again for the opportunity and the invitation for me to speak. But it's been a pleasure, and we're hoping to grow this movement, not just within India, but hopefully globally as well.
That's amazing, Seema. As always, inspirational and concise. Thank you very much. I now have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Rob Anderson, Public Diplomacy Officer, U.S. Consulate General, Mumbai. Rob joined the U.S. Consulate in August 2022 as the Cultural Affairs Officer. He oversees the Consulate's cultural and education outreach, including professional and educational exchange programs. Rob is a career diplomat with previous postings in Armenia, the Netherlands, Uruguay, Nigeria, and Germany. Rob was born and raised in Oregon, USA. He holds an MA in International Development from the University of Denver and a BS in Business Administration from Oregon State University. He speaks, now listen to this, Armenian, Dutch, Spanish, and looks forward to learning some Hindi during his tour in India. So Swagatam, Rob. A warm welcome to Aspire for Her. We'd love to hear from you what you think of the women leaders community.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible now? Okay, good. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I had to switch over to my phone. I did catch all the previous speakers, so and apologize for the sort of if this is not coming through clearly, but I think yeah, just starting to overcome some of these. Perfect. Okay. Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to be part of the Women Leaders Network. And you know, I also second your praise for Amrita and her work to really make this happen. She's doing a lot and kind of driving a lot of the work that this consulate's been doing over the years on women's empowerment, women's economic empowerment, especially. So thanks to Amrita DeMello on our team here at the consulate. And but it's great to work with you all, with AWE Foundation, Aspire for Her, fantastic partners. You know, we're at the consulate, as I think it's clear by now, that we're very passionate here about this topic, about women's increasing women's participation in the workforce broadly, but also participation at the board level specifically. I think we saw a gap there, and that's where you all came in and also saw the gap. And I think that's where we have a real opportunity to kind of move the needle. So, you know, we've been active in this space, advocating for increased economic opportunity and participation for women. Internally, we regularly review our own recruitment strategies as an organization, as a consulate, and our own job requirements to identify practices that unfairly disadvantage women. So we're not, you know, immune to some of the same situation that the corporates face. And then externally, as a consulate, we raise gender equity in the workplace in every meeting we have in the private sector. Amrita can second that, and that is just to make sure that our interests and in this goal that is clear and consistent, and that, you know, we want to make that clear in every meeting with, you know, local companies, but also with American companies when they come to do business in India. We partnered with the U.S.-India Business Council recently to discuss with the corporate community and several senior women executives how we can work together to address the troubling challenges women face in the global corporate culture and sort of integrating in the corporate culture. And we're working with companies and executives here who have created positive work environments for women and hoping that they can serve as a model and mentors for others. And I think as you mentioned earlier, that mentoring is, I think a lot of leaders, not just women, also men, they want to give back. They want to, they want to work in this space. And I think it's our job to kind of leverage that volunteer and mentoring spirit, because I think mentors also gain from mentoring. So so that's what we're certainly as a consulate trying to do, sort of bring those groups together. We're also working a bit now on in the STEM field to try to get working with partners to try to get more young girls at a young age interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, and then kind of build them up and retain them and sort of build a more diverse STEM workforce. So you'll see us, I think, working a bit more in that area as well. Now, I'm being new to India. This was it did surprise me actually, and it's the statistics that you just mentioned. That the participation rate is actually decreasing in the Indian labor market, and down to, I think you said 20. It was sort of 35%. Now we're down to, I think, 20%, and that's not a trend that we want to see, especially when you see the education gains here and the GDP growth in this country. Sort of has this strange converse relationship. So, and I know the IMF is also, put out some studies showing that what gender parity would do for India's economy. Even, it could boost GDP by more than 25%, or about 700 billion annually. So. And then but it's not just, in India. I think the highest levels of corporate leadership worldwide, women account for just 24% of senior executive roles, and even fewer are CEOs of large corporations. So just 1 in 20 Fortune 500 companies was led by a woman in 2018. And although women are gaining representation in executive committees of Fortune Global 100 companies, when we get back to the board level and looking at the board level, it's a very small minority. I think maybe 4% or something across Asia. So we found a real, an area to engage and address. And so that's why we're so happy to work with you all, with Aspire, for her AWE Foundation. What you're doing, it's so timely, it's important. And I just want to encourage everyone here who hasn't signed up or is on the fence about joining, please do join this network. You're going to have access to some fantastic training and resources. You'll be motivated by inspirational stories throughout this journey, which I've also, just the stories I've heard already since I've been here, and that Amrita continues to share with me and others, colleagues here at the Consulate. That there's a lot being done, and I think this could be a benefit to a lot of you. And so if I can't convince you, I know the other panelists who we're going to hear from, they're the experts, and I know they'll be able to convince you to take this step forward in what might be a life-changing experience. So thanks again, Divya, and thanks everyone. Look forward to the discussion today, and then hope to see as many of you as possible here at the Consulate next month, I guess, when we gather and get to dig into this a little bit more. So thanks a lot, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Back over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. And Rob said it himself. So November 18th, that's the date that we have in mind, where we'll all go and meet Rob and Amrita and a whole lot of other folks at the US Consulate. So that's good. In US Consulate in Mumbai, in BKC. So please put that, block that date off in your calendars. And right now, we want to just run a quick poll. And Priti, if you could run that for us. And then we will jump into the main discussion for the evening, which is going to be moderated by my dear friend, Divya Sampath. Divya is the sponsor and partner, Portfolio AWE Funds. She has also been a pillar of support to Aspire for her in very many different ways. So my pleasure and honor to introduce Divya. And Divya will, of course, do the honors of introducing the rest of the panel. But I just want to say just one thing before I hand over to Divya, which is it is beautiful moment for me here to actually see Manisha and Malini, two of our very favorite mentors at Aspire for Her, here on this panel. And the person that I would also like to welcome very specially, this is the first time that he is here on Aspire for Her. Shogato Gupta is a name which is very well known in Indian corporate circles. But I also look at him as the father of Sanjana and as the husband of our very favorite mentor, Rima, who ran our Not Alone campaign. So Shogato, I'm not going to do the other introductions, but I thought that for this setting, this introduction of yours is very important. So over to you, Divya, and we're really looking forward to the cracking panel discussion.
Thank you, Madhura, for the kind words. And as Wasima mentioned as well, I'm extremely privileged today for multiple reasons, but I'm especially honored to be carrying the flag for two exceptional organizations that I have the privilege to be associated with. One is Aspire for Her, and the other is AWE Funds. And I couldn't be more pleased and proud to be representing both today. But it's truly a great privilege to be introducing to all of you this amazing panel. Two of whom are exceptional mentors in our beloved AFH community. And the third person, as Madhura mentioned, is mentor adjacent because Rima is one of our most favorite and beloved mentors as well. So this is truly a group that's extremely distinguished for multiple reasons, and you'll see why. Let me start with Dr. Malini Shankar, who is currently the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Indian Maritime University. Now, Dr. Malini is, she belongs to the 1984 batch of the Indian Administrative Service and has had an absolutely illustrious career as a public servant and career bureaucrat over 3.5 decades. Her last assignment before she retired from the Indian Administrative Service was the Director General of Shipping on the rank and pay of Secretary to the Government of India. She's currently the chairperson of the National Shipping Board, which is a Government of India institution, and a member of the government-appointed board of directors of the ILNFS group of companies. She's also nominated by the IMO as an honorary member of the board of directors of the World Maritime University. Most recently, she's been selected as one of the 7 global recipients of the AAA award by the Asian Institute of Management, Manila, and she's the first Indian woman to receive the award. Believe me, her list of qualifications and awards is endless, and I could go on forever, but that would be a panel in and of itself. So I'll stop here, and we'll hope to hear more from Dr. Malini during the panel discussion. And moving on to our next equally distinguished woman in a different sphere of activities, Manisha has again had more than 30 years of investment banking experience. She currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Moelis India. Prior to that, she was the CEO and country head of UBS India. And she's had a distinguished career in banking, including leadership positions in Barclays Bank. And she'd originally started her investment banking career at ANZ Brindleys in London. She has been, those of you who have seen, who are avid readers and followers of the business community are very familiar with Manisha's name. She's been named one of the 25 most powerful women in business in India by Business Today for the past 6 years. She currently serves on the global board of Naspers, and she's a board member of Ashok Leyland as well as Mindspace Business Parks REIT. Manisha holds a degree in economics from St. Stephen's College and had a gold medal for her master's degree from the Delhi School of Economics. Again, if I were to talk about Manisha, that would be a half hour by itself. So we'll move on, last but not least, to Shogato Gupta, whom we have said is an honorary mentor for us. He currently serves as the Managing Director and CEO of Marico Limited. Having joined Marico in 2004 as the head of marketing, he was elevated to CEO of the India business in 2007, and in 2014 took over as Managing Director of the company. Very famously, and I read this in a profile about him on his alma mater, IIM Bangalore, where he quoted, "What has got you here won't be enough to get you to the next level." So I couldn't think of a more appropriate sentiment. We'll hope to hear more from him on those terms. He's extremely known for his performance-oriented attitude, and under his leadership, Marico has been driven to become a future-ready organization. It's been consistently profitable. As a shareholder, I certainly appreciate that sustainable growth so combined with societal value creation. So it's also considered one of the most responsible and governed organizations in India. I believe someone is mute everyone who isn't supposed to be speaking. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thanks, folks. Marico has won several accolades under his leadership, including one of the best 25 workplaces in manufacturing in India, one of the top 50 best companies to work for, and has been ranked among the top 10 in corporate governance, as well as the best domestic company in corporate governance recognition by Asia Money. And he's also on the PwC list of India's top 100 CEOs and ranked as one of India's most valuable CEOs by Business World. In addition to being managing director and obviously being on the board of Marico, he's on the boards of Delivery Limited and Ashok Leyland Limited. And Ashok Leyland is obviously an organization that he and Manisha have in common. Again, a warm welcome to all three of you. Thank you for agreeing to spend your time with us. And I look forward to hearing from you and learning from you, as I'm sure the whole audience is. And I'd like to start with you, Shogato, in reverse order, if we may. What would your sentiments be? Could you talk a little bit about your views on the trends in gender equity at the board level in India over the last few years?
Okay, I think first of all, I must say that recently we really achieved our long-term objective where we have 3 women board members. And this is something which was a journey for us. I think firstly, I must say that this concept doesn't require any debate. If you really look at it, diversity, whether it's gender and thought and different backgrounds, it drives innovation, it drives long-term performance. And the way I believe it is that it has to be not just through, a lot of organizations approach diversity in terms of statistics, but I think it has to start by intent and genuinely believing that it makes a difference. And I think that's something which we follow, and as a practice, we believe that actually diversity makes a significant difference. Now, if you really look at it, I think, and it also starts with the fact that if you look at, there are enough, I think, talented, diverse candidates available, whether it's for senior level positions, similarly for board positions. And if you really look at it, ultimately, diversity in the board will actually trigger far more diversity in the senior management, because I think what happens is that usually when you have in board members significant diversity in the board, it actually drives far more a kind of a movement to drive, and they can mentor diversity, because what is important in the current set of things is a lot of people join the workforce, but they step out at a certain stage of time, and then very few reach the senior level, and that is the pool that actually drives the board members. I think we have had a fantastic experience on driving diversity, and also what is important is that within the board, I think the board members, the women board members, also given positions in terms of chairing some of the committees, because that also gives them an opportunity to drive some of these diversity agenda. I think it started off, if you look at women in boards, I mean, it started off by as a lot of companies thinking it's a statutory thing to do. But I believe there are a critical set of organizations who believe today that it makes a genuine difference, just as we see diversity making a significant difference in terms of business performance, in terms of actually bringing different thoughts. So I would say that this is something which has started off, it is gaining momentum, and you will, I think, very soon see this kind of a movement where a significant number of organizations don't necessarily just comply with the regulation, which is having one, but genuinely having 2 or 3 members, and also having a belief that they are actually genuinely making a difference. Our belief is that I think diversity has made a significant difference to our organization. And there are enough studies in the world which have shown that actually true diversity drives not only innovation, drives different thought, different processes, and also business performance.
Thank you, Shogato. That was you made several points that I'd like to touch on and pick up on later on in the discussion, particularly the ones around. And kudos to Mariko for not just having one token board member, which is the mandate from the regulatory body, but actually having three and building a quorum of women directors on the board. And I do want to come back and talk to the entire board on several other points that you made. But I'd like to ask a similar question, considering that Manisha and Malini, you've both been part of boards, and you've both been witness to the changing perspectives and trends with respect to senior leadership and women in boardrooms. I just wondered if I could start with you, Manisha. Would you want to add a few points from your perspective on changing perspectives that you witnessed?
So thanks, Divya. Firstly, Sugato, congratulations. I didn't realize Mariko had 3 women board members. That's fabulous. But, I think there is still a lot of hesitation and resistance. And I think the segment that Sugato probably comes from, which is consumer companies, IT, they are, in my experience, more forward-looking. The others are basically, at the moment, just stuck on one board member. And as Sugato said, it's probably comes from a statutory mindset, and it's not evolving beyond that. The places where I've seen success globally as well as in India is where the chairperson actually is very inclusive. So, you need to basically, just like we say in corporates, on boards also take away the unconscious bias, that the lady is not there just to mark that one seat, and we don't need her input. She doesn't bring much. Committee heads, things like audit, NRC, etc., are seen as absolutely a no-no for women because it's like they don't have the experience. So my view is that a lot more needs to be done, and the onus lies on the chairperson or the CEO to make the board more inclusive. Not just have the token woman, but also ask for her opinion. A lot of times the woman who comes onto the board knows that she got in for the wrong reasons, i.e. for regulatory reasons, and probably doesn't participate that much because it's a board of 12 or 15 people and you're one woman, right? So you feel marginalized anyways. And if it's a manufacturing company, you feel maybe that's given our lack of background on STEM, etc. in a lot of cases, we think we can't contribute as much. So I would really encourage more boards to think like Mariko does, which is not only have more members, but more importantly, take away the unconscious biases, because as Sugato said, study after study has shown that boards which are homogeneous do not have cognitive diversity. They all read and interpret the same information. There's really no diversity of thought, and those are the companies that fall. So I would like to see a lot more done, because in the experience of my women colleagues who are all over in different boards, I think things are changing very slowly. Now, I must say, Divya, that that's my last point, that the onus also lies on women, right? You may have got in for the wrong reasons, but you must participate. You must have your voice heard. You must have your opinions heard. You must read up. Today, joining a board is a lot of hard work, right? The kind of prep you have to do before any board meeting is enormous. But, you must do that, because that's how you, not only for your own self, you'll build credibility, you'll build credibility for all the women around you. And that's really important, because you got in first. The onus is on you to make sure you carry more women into these positions. And hence I feel the onus is as much on women, because as it is, women don't participate much. We've seen this, and I don't want to spend more time in companies and managements, in boardroom, women just sit back, right? So I think we need to do a lot more on the onus is as much on us as on the chairperson and the other board members. But I'll stop there and let Malini share her experience.
Oh, thank you, Manisha. In fact, both of you, and I'm very, very curious to hear from Dr. Malini on this as well, because she comes at this from a sector which, has, at least in public perception, has a lot of preconceived notions, I think, about how active and vocal women are on boards. Dr. Malini, what are your views? How have things changed? And you've certainly seen more than 3.5 decades of this change going on. Love to hear your perspective on this.
So I will speak about the boards first, and then the perspective of, what has changed in 3.5 decades. If you look at the statistics, statistics shows that in India, 19.7% of the board members are women, which is not bad at all. Let's start with a very positive point. As Manisha said, this is probably driven more by legislation than by voluntary co-option. And you look at the global figure, it is 29% women. So 19.7% women from where India started in 29%. The highest being Norway. Norway is 40% women on boards. But then you look at the cultural context of, where Norway is in terms of equality between men and women, and where India is. So it's not bad, but, we have a long way to go, like Robert Frost says. That's number one for me. Number two is, I always wonder when you look at the school board exams, whether it's central board or state boards, you will find among the toppers, among the top 10, you will find five women, six women. I mean, 60, 70%. Where do they go? I've always wondered, is there any agency which is following up on these toppers? If they top the school board exams, that means they're very aspirational, very ambitious, and very committed. So do they do that only to enter into medical college and IITs, or is there something beyond that? Where do they go and why do they not enter, or do they leave the country? Do they drop off? Do they get dejected? I mean, what is it? I think that kind of, this thought occurs to me very frequently. Another point is, where do we go from here? It's a mindset change. And I'm going to share a small, story. This is a friend of mine, and she is in the civil service. Her father was also in the civil service, but the husband is not in the civil service, private sector. So when the son was 4 years old, you've seen the mother coming back with files and the father coming back with laptops, right? So in government, you come with what you call bastas, huge files. So when the grandfather, who is a civil servant, came home to spend the weekend with them, and when he opened the files, the child told the grandfather, but Tata, you are not supposed to do files. It is only ammas who do files. So you see the concept of, it's ingrained in the culture that you grow up in. It's an ecosystem saying the child grows up thinking, moms work, moms do files, moms are very busy. And I think if you stretch it, it is, yes, the CEOs are very important, and there are studies which show where the CEO is a woman, there are more women board members. But I think there's also a large, contribution which will come from the HR head. And I see it in shipping industry. You don't see any. I'm sometimes in a meeting with no women whatsoever, and even there, when the HR head is a woman, then there is some kind of, just because she's the only person there, she says, okay, let me get three or four more women. So I think the HR is very, very important. Studies also show, this is very interesting, I just read, where the woman is, where the number of women on the boards are high, those companies actually have a higher credit rating. I think studies like this need to be popularized because, okay, diversity is fine. You're getting all kinds of ideas and inputs is fine, but I think the credit rating would become extremely significant factor for the company to actually veer towards that. So that's about the boards. Now about my 3.5 years, 3.5 decades. I remember when we joined service, and this was true till the Swachhata Abhiyan actually took off. There were what was one factor which was missing for women to get into, even employment in good offices is no toilets. I mean, there were just no toilets. And if you said, okay, where is the toilet? It would be the officer would have a toilet, but there would be no facilities for the rest of them. And that's drastically changed in the last 5 to 7 years. And that's one aspect which I'm extremely happy, because women do need this facility much more than the men for reasons best known to us, right? I look at women who joined the civil service in the 70s. They fought. They had to fight. They had to fight, society. They had to fight parents. They had to fight nosy relatives saying, "Why do you need to work? You just get married." I think they led the way for most of us. 80s was much easier. And if you see the 90s and beyond 2000, they've come with a lot of confidence. In fact, there was a workshop for women officers. I remember a majority of them, and I was shocked because that's not the reason why I got into civil service. A whole majority of them said they got into civil service to escape marriage. They were, yes, I mean, this is, that's not why I got in, but I was really surprised and even close to being shocked to hear that statement. They got into civil service to escape parental pressure on marriage. So you come in for different reasons and you move up. But I think the ones who led the path in the 70s and 80s have made it so much easier for us. All the more reason for introspection as to why the women are dropping off the workforce. So two things I think the women need mindset from the people who are around them, whether it's family, whether it is, their work situation, their friend circle, etc. Has to be a mindset change. And second is confidence. There are a lot of women who are qualified to hold these positions, but they question themselves, saying, "Can I really do this? Am I qualified for this? Will I succeed? What will happen?" So that confidence building is something which probably comes with experience, but can come with mentoring and can come with like-minded people who surround you. I think I'll stop here because I've spoken quite a bit about the entire gamut of women.
No, but it's all three of you made such excellent points, and I've been taking notes because there are so many things that I'd like. Time won't permit us to get into every single one, but I just want to pick out a few sort of top threads for everyone to remember. All three of you made the point about diversity not just being the right thing from an ethical or moral standpoint, but it having definite business benefits, whether it's cognitive diversity, which leads to better decision making, or whether it's the actual performance of the organization. All three of you also talked about the need for people to step up, for women to step up, as well as the influence that senior people on the board and around the board have, chairpersons, the CEO of the organization, HR officers. You've all talked about the importance of mindset change and the change that you've seen, but the enormous progress that is left to be done. So much more that I've taken notes about, and I hope we'll get to revisit. At this point, I'd like for us to take a very brief pause. So request Preeti to just put the next poll up for people to react to before I move on to the next set of questions for our panel. So Preeti, if you would.
Divya, would you have time for Q&A at all?
We will have time for Q&A.
Great. I get my hand up.
We can actually take the
All a
poll
few
in
seconds.
Divya. Yeah, can we take the poll towards the end, Divya? Sorry, because
we can. If that's how you feel about it, that's fine. Preeti, let's actually do the next poll as well at the end of the session. Thank you, folks. We'll give you a chance to. I hope you're taking all of this in, and I hope you're going to take inspiration, obviously, from our fabulous speakers. I'm more than happy to come back to the poll at the end. Fair enough. So all three of you have cited some interesting data. And in fact, as Dr. Malini pointed out, India has actually, since the Companies Act of 2013 mandated the need for at least one woman on every board, India has actually increased from, we used to have about less than double digits in terms of percentage of women board members, which has certainly gone up to just under 20%, which is progress, but still way away from the 50% of the population that women actually represent, which is, of course, the ideal that we should be striving towards. However, the Deloitte report on Deloitte Global has an annual report on women in the boardroom, which has been coming out for a few years now. And the latest report actually reported that only 3.6% of board chair positions are now held by women. And that's actually down by 0.9%, almost a full percentage point from last year, which is a little bit disappointing. Which kind of brings me to I do want to talk about, we talked about this, about, it mandates perhaps driving a little bit of tokenism in terms of being forced to include a woman and then therefore just getting her on the board. Other countries like the UK and Norway have also used government mandates. We're not alone. And I think Dr. Malini also made the point that Norway has 40% of board positions being filled with women. So it's not that mandates don't necessarily work, but perhaps more needs to be done. For example, in the US, there's quite an interesting report from the Kellogg School of Management, which talks about the activism of three massive institutional investors, right? Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, which collectively manage over $13 trillion in assets. And they account for about 3/4 of index mutual fund assets in the United States. The dominant shareholder in 88% of firms on the S&P 500. And they've certainly started pushing for gender diversity on the boards over the last few years. So I'm just curious about, should we be doing other things? Let me start with you, Manisha, because again, you come with a very strong investment banking background. You worked in multiple countries. What is your view on some other things we ought to be doing to drive better representation of women on boards?
So I think, look, we cannot take away or underestimate what regulation can do in terms of change, because there is resistance to change. There is always this debate on should we be doing this? Should we be forcing women onto boards? And I say yes, because, the mindset is anti-women, right? So I think whether it's regulation saying, look, let's go up to 2 board members, it's something that we should all think about. I think the time is right. There's been enough time and that women have spent now on boards, and I'm sure there are lots more who are keen to come. So yeah, regulation is important. Activist investors is a big way to drive change, because I think, as Sugato will tell you, as a CEO, the biggest thing is your shareholder returns, right? So I think if you have activist investors, they are not just investors today who are driven by ESG mandates and hence are forcing people to have a more diverse boards. It's pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, really traditional investors who are forcing boards that 30% of the board should be women and other diverse communities. And why is that? Because, as Malini said, because they've seen better performance of these boards, right? The bottom line of companies which have diverse boards are much higher. The return on equity is much higher. So I think some of this change, even if our Indian mutual funds and institutional investors can drive, that will be great. I think anyway, global funds will drive that change in India too, because as you know, a lot of the Indian stock market is held by foreign institutional investors. So I am confident that anyway, this change will be imposed on these companies just mandatorily, and they will have to respond to it, because this is about maximizing shareholder returns. So I think some of these changes can definitely be done. But I think they raised a bigger issue, which is that why aren't there enough chairperson? Why aren't there enough women? And that's also because our funnel is very poor, right? And it's the point Sugato made, that we're just not nurturing enough women talent in companies, which is why, when Malini said, where have the toppers gone? All the toppers in my class are basically at home, because we have such patriarchal mindsets, and women have just been pulled out of the workforce as soon as, the husband's income gets to a stage where two incomes are not needed. So I think that yes, change regulation is important and must be imposed in countries like India, where there is resistance to change. But I think what's really important, and it's a much bigger issue, is the societal changes that are needed. And organizations. I hope that the takeaway from all of this pandemic is that flexible hours is the need of the day. You and I are talking on this platform. Let women work from home. Let there be like 4 days of office or 3 days of office. Let the rest be work from home. Some of those changes are really needed to attract and more importantly retain women talent, because women are academically, I think, really pushing ahead, but we're just losing them in the mid-level, unfortunately.
Thank you, Manisha. And actually, I want to segue over to you, Shogato, because you brought up the same point, when you were first speaking to us about the first question. And as Manisha said, the percentage of women in top management in India and senior management is significantly lower even than the percentage of women on boards, because I think totally there's about 7% at the senior management level and about 5% in top management, which, as Manisha said, and I think you alluded to, the funnel is quite narrow. So what are some of the things that, drawing from your experience at Marico, and what would your advice be that what can corporate India do to make this situation a little bit better?
I think it is just not about selecting, it's about creating an enabling environment for women or any diversity, set to actually thrive. And I think it starts off with a belief. And I think one important thing that has happened is now you have a critical mass of people who have, spouses who are working, and that creates a far more empathy and a understanding of the kind of, the way to, ensure that people, because if you look at the dropouts, and I think as Manisha said, if I look at my batch also, it's a similar situation. I mean, I think a lot of them work for 15, 20 years and they drop out because of certain pressures. And I think that is something which, whether it's flexi time, this post-COVID, one of the biggest benefits that has come, which is work from home and flex. So therefore, for example, we work on a hybrid model. The hybrid model for certain functions enables us actually to drive more diversity. So so I think it is extremely important. And if you really look at it, the biggest loss that happens is somewhere 15 years, 10 years, 15 years into work life. And therefore, how do you create a certain enabling environment, identify talent who are high potential, groom them and ensure, mentor them, and therefore accelerate their careers and give them flexibility, whether it's a sabbatical, whether it's this one, and ensure that sabbaticals or flexi working is not seen as something as a disadvantage. And I think half of it is a mindset. I'll give you an example, which is holistic diversity. A lot of Indian companies have now moved overseas, and we have significant portion of our business in other emerging markets. We always thought that we need to send expat Indian, top management there. I'll give you one example in Southeast Asia, what we have done. We now have completely localized other than one person. And also we have 55% women in our Southeast Asia business.
Wow.
And in our top management, in XCOM of Southeast Asia, America, Southeast Asia. And I think it's created both the diversity, localization and gender diversity has created a certain degree of, entire buoyancy in the system. And look at it very logically, like if 60% of my target consumers are women, at least in the consumer facing functions like R&D, product development, marketing, I must have majority of the leaders as women, because at the end of the day, I think it's important that the best insights and the best diversity comes there. So I think it all starts with creating an enabling environment, just not selection. And let me tell you something, if you have so many talented people, and I think it spoke about all the board exams and everything, I think it starts with the recruitment and starts with the managers who select. The tendency is to select people of the same kind, is to how do you encourage diversity. And I think also it's important that driving inclusiveness and diversity should be a criteria for promoting talent also. That as a leader, are you promoting diversity? As a leader, I think the problem in a corporate world, a lot of cases is we only look at business performance. We don't look at the softer aspects of people leadership. And I think driving diversity and inclusiveness is also a part of driving people leadership. So I think these are the things we should look at. But to me, the critical part is during those critical years when people are 15 years into the work, when the dropout happens, how does the organization create a enabling environment for people to, because a lot of women reach middle management, I think then the fallout happens. And that's the time where I think organization needs to create that enabling environment for people to thrive.
Absolutely. Well said, Shagato. And I want to actually move on to Malini, because she had referred to a couple of points as well. She started speaking about them, including mindset change. But exactly as you said, diversity, I think there's a quote that says diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. You also made the point about not just having women on boards, but also putting them in positions where they can make key decisions, being on the compensation committee, being on the HR committee, having a voice in the strategic decisions of the company. So Malini, I want to pivot to you and just pick up on that same point if we could. And you personally, I mean, Shagato made the very important point about, other kinds of diversity, not just gender diversity. You personally started your career in Maharashtra cadre. I know you worked at the national level and you're currently in Tamil Nadu. You've seen most of this country. From your perspective, would you feel like other kinds of diversity, for example, like regional representation, being closer to the sort of people, how do you feel that plays out? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think as you go to the top, I don't think you can look at it'll boil down to giving quotas, for example. I don't think I'll encourage that at all. But what I will go back and, if I can deviate a little bit from your question, it comes back to mindset. For example, if the men gather together, it's an old boys club. But if the women gather together, and I've heard this comment, you're Mahila Mandal. Okay? So the connotations of the two are actually quite different. I've heard, and I'm talking about companies, not government, because government actually is equal opportunity employer in the beginning. And since it is not hire and fire system, you stay on. But I've heard companies say, oh, but we can't hire somebody who's 25. She's likely to get married and she's going to take maternity leave, for 2 children. And, we really can't invest in this person who is going to go on leave. Now this, how do you deal with this? So that's where the HR comes in and says, yes, we deal with it. We have a policy to deal with it. Now, if you look at many of the surveys which are coming out in recent times as to who's a good employer, during the pandemic, there were a huge number of surveys of this kind. And they ask the employees whether they stay on, they like a company because they pay well, they give you lots of perks, etc., etc. And the top 2 reasons why people stay on the companies is a good environment, working environment, the working culture. And the second one was how much they nurture their employees. So if you don't look at it as this person is going to take maternity leave and you actually nurture them, they'll probably come back and do better for you. That's one. The second is, I know of 1 or 2 cases at least, because I'm not really in the corporate sector, but I get neutral feedback because I'm completely outside. There was a comment made by one or two people saying as you go up, you have to fight so much and the men gang up and fight against you. And they can spread canards about you. And you don't want to get into that harassment zone. So you just quietly walk out and do something on your own. I don't know whether the panelists in the corporate sector would agree with this, but this is something which comes from there to the outside world. So
I just want to pause you there, not to interrupt you, but I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and I know that some people have some immediate commitments after this, so I want to be respectful of the panel's time. And I do want to make sure that we give at least a couple of the audience folks a chance to ask you questions while they have you, not just me asking you questions. So I'll start with Reema Malhotra. You've got your hand up. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, and thank you. It was an amazing session. My very quick question is that we spoke a lot about what the corporates need to do, what the government needs to do, the regulation, etc. I think my question is, what do we need to do to prepare ourselves to be board ready? That's one. And the other is that, even if you're board ready, you're somehow not in the network of being called in for board roles. So how do you get there is the second part of my question.
Okay, I'm going to be selfish and basically say that the first step is to join the cohort of women on boards, which is exactly designed to make you board ready. But there are a lot of resources out there. And I do want to make sure that I ask each one of you, if you were to give one piece of advice to women who are aspiring for board roles, if we can go around the table and just ask for the one piece of advice from each of you, that'd be great. Shogata, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think I would say that there are enough opportunities available, and look at organizations which, especially for your first board role, which actually creates an enabling environment for people to thrive and who has a track record of driving inclusiveness, because that will create, I think, more opportunities for you.
Manisha?
Yeah, I think these are very valid points, right? Because as you said, there is regulation, etc., which can drive change. But what do women need to do? They need to be board ready. They need to invest in themselves, whether it's by reading more, understanding more. I mean, today, thanks to the net, there's a lot available, and there's a lot of self-teaching you can do. Not trying to marginalize the importance of mentors, etc. But you can do a lot, and you must do it because when you enter, you should be. As I said before, you should be there for the right reasons. So please take the onus on yourself. Of course, as Divya said, build networks is the most important thing, and especially build female mentors who are in these positions, because I think women really recommend more women. There's a network out there which wants to see more and more women in boards as CEOs, etc. So go out there and network, put yourself out there, raise your hand. I don't think women do that enough. A lot of my female colleagues say, how come we weren't recommended? And I'm like, but you didn't even mention to me you're interested, right? So please go out there, put yourself out there. As somebody said, there's a boys club there which is promoting itself. There is no women's club there promoting you. So go out there and ask for it. And it doesn't matter if you get turned down. Go out and ask for it again a second or a third time. But please do take the onus on yourself too, because a lot of time organizations and individuals are in a hurry, and they don't mean badly, but they just tend to overlook your desires, etc. So just like our male counterparts do, put out your wish list right out there upfront, even if it's in your own organization, right? If you'd like to be on the boards of certain subcommittees, or you want to start somewhere, then just put your hand out there. It's very important. More than anything else, I think women don't raise their hand enough.
Thank you, Manisha. Malini, and it would be great if you could also speak to, I know you have a lot of experience also on educational boards and in that sector. So we speak a lot about corporate boards, but I think it's also important if you could speak to any advice for people who aspire to be on non-profit or, public sector boards. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, there's not much to add to what Shogata or Manisha said. Whether you're man or women, I think if you're going to prepare for a board, I would just say two things. One is widen the perspective, because as you go higher and you prepare for higher level roles, you just have to widen the perspective and not just be excellent at the role that you have been doing in the past. Second is keep abreast of developments, which includes policy changes, which includes dynamics of the sector, etc. Read and keep abreast. I think these two can stand you in good stead no matter what you want to do, but very important for board positions or CEO positions.
Thank you, Malini. And with that, I'm conscious of time. with these panelists, honestly, it would be a pleasure to keep talking to them for 2 hours, but unfortunately, they're all busy people and don't have that much time with us. Preeti, can I just request you to put the poll back up for our audience to participate in? And while we do that, Madhura, I'd certainly like to thank all 3 of our panelists who have been exceptional. It's been a privilege talking to you, and I could have gone on for a long time. Madhura, I'd like to hand back to you to just round up and farewell us all, if you will.
Thank you very much. And that was such an amazing conversation. And this is just the beginning, let me assure you. And for all of you who do want to ask more questions to our very inspiring panelists here, there will be lots of opportunities as this community grows. And not just opportunities on Zoom, opportunities to meet in person, opportunities to have fairly interesting conversations outside this Zoom room as well. So please be a part of the community if you haven't signed up. And Rima, the answer to your question is this community, actually. That's exactly what Divya said. Thank you very much for being a very, very attentive and a very engaged audience. And with that, have a great weekend ahead. Have a great night. Thank you very much for being part of Aspire for Her. And don't forget to keep aspiring for her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhura. It's a great initiative, and felicitations to you and your team for organizing this.